Aloha, my name is Roberto Delgado, and I am a developer at Holocron Security, and I will let my guests introduce themselves.
Sure. I'm Craig. I'm the CTO, co-founder, and primary inventor at Holocron Security.
My name is Blake Wallick. I'm with GC Associates in Honolulu. This is our space, the Nā Koa Innovation Center, and right now, studio. Thanks for coming over and spending time here.
Oh, thanks for having us. The space is awesome. It's crazy, especially with all the screens in the back. It's awesome.
It's a wonderful space.
Also the hospitality, the
absolutely.
food, great.
Absolutely. I also, am a little rusty with my podcasting skills because this is my very first podcast ever, but I should have said that this is Holocron's first podcast. So this is our inaugural podcast in collaboration with, of course, GCA and here in the Nā Koa Innovation Center. And I thought today we'd have just a really low-key initial conversation and kind of riff on things that are really interesting to me and to my friend Craig, and that we can, get some insight into from Blake. And most of it isn't going to be tied directly to cybersecurity, although we could kind of weave in and out of it if we want to. I know Craig and I our conversations have ranged all over. Like we've talked philosophy, we've talked about family, we've talked about linguistics, talked about code, of course, and math, and a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Web development, everything. But I thought that a really interesting question to start with for both of you would be, if you could think of one contrarian take that you have, what would that be? So essentially, something that you very strongly believe to be true, and maybe you kind of hide it a little bit just because it's not the conventional wisdom, or is just not the dominant view, but one that you really believe in your heart of hearts that it is true, but it may be contrarian given the current market realities. So Craig, maybe we can start with you.
I was going to let Blake go
Okay,
first.
maybe we can start with you.
Well, my contrarian view is that Craig should go first. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to, I like to be an early adopter of things. And so, although it's very clear that everything is going AI right now, I like that cutting edge where people get, hesitant. They don't want to try things out. I feel like I'm not, the head honcho of GCA, and so I'm not making the big decisions about what technologies we adopt or not right now. But I would say, just as general, my personal take on it is that the new stuff out there, everyone's got to play with it. It's time well spent to play with it and put 40 hours of research into some new doodad you hear about out there that hasn't been adopted in mass. Just get your hands dirty all the time. So I don't know, is that contrarian, or is that kind of what everybody thinks?
I see what you're saying, because even today I was listening to a podcast. We're going meta here. I'm listening to a podcast, so it's hard not to reference other podcasts in a podcast.
Yeah.
But I was listening to a podcast where there was some hotshot company that's in the AI space at the moment, and their principal engineer was talking about how one of the main ways that they sift people out is, at this point, it doesn't matter how senior you are in terms of engineering. If you've never touched an AI interface or an AI product, they won't hire you, or they'll consider whether you should belong as part of the team. And so what's interesting to me about that take is that there's something that's shifting. I think they were also reflecting on the fact that they both, as seasoned engineers, had the opposite take just a few months ago, which was, if you have a certain level of engineering and you're at a senior level, it doesn't matter whether you believe AI is going to transform things or not. We can train you up later. But now it seems like there's a shift, which is if you refuse to touch AI, then you are a liability to this company. So that to me kind of connects with what you're saying, which is there's an attitude among some folks that is kind of like completely averse, and others are just, and that's becoming a liability. So
yeah, I think AI in general is just contrarian, right, to itself, because there's so many people that are afraid of AI that is just getting bigger and better, and eventually AGI, and then what's going to happen with humans, right? And like, are we going to have jobs anymore, and all this other stuff. So I think that a lot of people are failing to adopt new technology for those reasons, right? They have their own risk adverse attitude or whatever it may be, going back to what you were saying. And so maybe what you're saying is very, controversial, is like going out and getting your hands dirty with new technology all the time, like AI. And, there's so many people that are like, no, you're feeding into the system, So yeah, I agree with you. That's contrarian, absolutely. And it's kind of funny that you mentioned that with like the job interview thing. So back in December, we did interviews with a bunch of interns from University of Hawaii. And I'd say, so we interviewed 6 different candidates. And of those 6 candidates, there were only 2 that actually knew how to code. And they're all computer science students, right? And this isn't dogging on University of Hawaii at all. This is more...
I'm a UH grad with
a
computer science degree.
I have too. Same, bachelor's and master's and working on PhD. But so when I say that it's not dogging on UH, I mean it, right? It's not dogging on UH. But what's happening now is that there's so many students that understand the philosophy behind it, but they don't do as much coding because they let the AI do the coding, right? So when you ask them to do simple things, they're just like dumbfounded, right? And so we did have a requirement that like you could do basic coding, but then on top of that, the next follow-on step was, all right, now examine this repo. We want you to pull this repo, because we had them do like get operations too, right? Make sure they're not. So, but pull this repo and examine it. Use Claude, and figure out what's going on. And so some of the candidates couldn't even do that. They've never touched it before. And I'm like, how do you not know how to code and not touch this, right? And it's because they were vibe coding. They weren't using coding agents. They were going through to ChatGPT and like putting up their source code on ChatGPT and getting feedback, and then like copy pasting it back in, or manually typing it, kind of thing. And so, I mean, ultimately we went with people that knew how to use open code, right? That's what we ended up using for it. And like Misha, who we brought on now as full-time junior engineer,
Maybe, Craig, before you continue, sorry to interrupt, but maybe we can, this is a classic podcast move, but can we explain what open code is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Folks, just the nutshell version.
Yeah, and so a lot of people, I think, at this point are familiar with Claude Code, right? You've got like OpenClaw out there, which is an agent harness, if you will. Like it utilizes an LLM in order to perform a bunch of different functions. And then you've got like a coding agent system like Claude Code that's like, its whole purpose is to like create files and go through and do actions, perform bash commands, things like that, terminal stuff. And then Open Code, before Claude Code's, or before their source code was leaked, right? Open Code's been around for a little while, and it was a bunch of people that wanted to use Claude Code with their self-hosted LLMs or other providers. So they ended up standing up Open Code, and it's a great product, and you can use it with any LLM. You can use your self-hosted, you can use it with, Anthropic or Grok or whatever the case may be. And they don't put any restrictions on it. And they've formatted it to where it can work with those different LLMs. And it has, that's where I learned most about like agents and spinning up sub agents and everything else from working through Open Code, because they like, that is the purpose, like that is what they do. And they make it very clear. And whereas like Claude Code, it's like, they kind of hint about it, and then like you have to do more research. Sure. Right? Like you have to find podcasts or you have to find YouTube videos.
So it's almost like an open source implementation of the Claude Code SDK.
Yeah. I wouldn't say SDK, but the actual
the harness
application,
itself.
The harness.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. That's really cool. I interrupted your train of thought. Did you already share your contrarian take?
I mean, my contrarian take, I'll get there, but but for students and that agentic AI approach and everyone, like, we've made it part of our interview for a reason, right? Like, we need to support it. Like, you're gonna fall behind if you're not using it in software nowadays.
And how many are Holocron right now? How many do you have?
27.
Okay.
26, maybe. Somewhere in there, 26 or 27. I don't do the people part.
Sure.
But
he does some of the people part.
Yeah.
The engineers. Yeah.
Yeah, the engineers, absolutely. We got 7 engineers total that are working on it, and for those 7 engineers, I mean, we are pumping through all kinds of tokens. So I mean, we've got self-hosted LLMs, we've got paid subscriptions to other places. We do all kinds of work with it. A whole bunch of Mac Studios. I mean, yeah.
So Craig's, I think one of the things that's really fascinating about Holocron that I've learned as working with Craig is that, and I knew this before about Craig, but there's a big emphasis on building things in-house. A lot of it is built in-house and from first principles, because it has to be, because he comes from a very rigorous sort of security mindset. And so things that would off the shelf be acceptable are not acceptable in Holocron. They have to be thought from first principles, and the rigor of security has to be tight. So even to the point of deploying our own LLMs inside of Mac Studios inside of, like, on-prem essentially, is something that is very important.
When you say your own, talk me through that. Is it something that you construct totally from the ground up? Is it something that you take open source and train it for your purposes? Or what does your own mean on those?
Yeah, I'll answer that one. So we started off by creating our own, like straight up our own. Like, not a foundational model.
Blank.
We went straight into some Python application. Can't remember anymore what the hell it was called. But yeah, we had data sets that we pulled from Hugging Face and trained our own model. It was like 1 million inputs, right? It wasn't that much, but like, it was just something so we understood it, right? And that's the big thing, is like what he was talking about, the foundational pieces and stuff. Like, we make sure that the engineers understand what they're working on. And so, like, that's one of the initial projects you have to do. And so if you're going to touch AI, you got to know how it works. And then further beyond that is, like, we take models and we train them. So we do fine tuning on models. Take the instructor ones where it's the IT is what they're labeled as on Hugging Face, and you can train it, and you can do more fine-tuned tooling calls is what we've used it for in the past, and then what we're doing more modern with it is improving reasoning, right? And that entire chain and process. So I mean, yeah, when we say our own models, like, yeah, we take, like, nowadays what we end up doing is taking, like, the newer model, like Gemma 4, and pulling in those and doing training and fine-tuning on those, so it's not the commercial off-the-shelf, right? We get the responses that we want, and we evaluate those responses. Yeah. My controversial take, though, is I know, because we're, like, finally getting to it.
Get to it.
Is that, like, these small models that we're working with, like, that is the future. Like, a lot of people look at it as and maybe it's not that, like, controversial, but the way that we see it is, one, everyone, I mean, we want to own our own data. We don't want to send our stuff off anywhere else. But we also don't think that everyone has the technical capability to stand up their own LLM and train and fine-tune their own LLM. And the cost for getting somebody that can do that is pretty high. So one of the things that we think is, like, one, you're going to have a very, very small model that runs on your local machine, not just an on-prem LLM server, but something that's going to be small and compact enough to run your own machine. We're doing that now. Like, we've got that capability now.
I just recently, as of 2 weeks ago, did that for the first time.
Oh, yeah?
Just in my own on my own machine using Ollama.
Okay.
I learned about a tool at a conference a couple weeks ago, C5 Cyber and IT, for, like, DoD tech folks. And there was a guy there, Michael Green, shout out. I'll probably tag you. He inspired me with his demo using a tool called Naden. It's N8N. Naden.
Yeah, N8N.
Yeah. I hadn't used it before. I hadn't heard it before, but using it to put together, agentic tools and things. Yeah. And so I'm messing around with that, and one of the things that he kind of talked me through the first steps is putting together Docker and running the local Olama instance to do that. And so that's what I mean by getting hands dirty. Like I like to work that out, and I don't know, it was sort of a wake up moment when I was like, okay, so this is my machine. So if I turn off Wi-Fi and then ask it questions, does it still work? And I did it, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. It's so much smaller. I like OpenAI. I like ChatGPT. It does what I want it to. I like that it has my inputs, and like it gets to know what you're about and stuff. But I totally agree that the utility of having something small and local is like there's so much potential there. For all kinds of different applications. So
that's really interesting because it's also proving out this use case of like commercial hardware could just have enough power to start to support these workloads, but is it going to be doing it securely, and is it going to have the same UX that we've come to expect given the availability of the large language models that we connect to through the internet? Right, yep. Because maybe this is kind of like, setting up the question for more. If you could kind of peel the curtain back on some of the more sort of exciting things that Holocron is. I mean, a lot of the things that we're working on are really exciting, but this, the concept registry, or the idea of making sort of intelligence available, in a way that takes advantage of this dynamic of smaller models that are on hardware that can support it, and yet a layer of intelligence that can connect to it still. I don't know if that's a little too far ahead in terms of our conversation, but there's a lot there that's super interesting that I think we're working on, and maybe that's a part of a second podcast episode. But
yeah, I mean,
I don't know. There seems to be a movement that is, I guess, to generalize this idea, maybe not tie it specifically to Holocron. Like there is clearly a push to make things smaller, and that can sit inside of commercial hardware. Maybe that's the wider availability of open source models that are smaller, and kind of baking in more intelligence at a smaller scale.
Yeah.
But then there's still this question of like, even if you have the smaller things in more commercial hardware, like what's happening to all this intelligence that we're seeding in these larger platforms, right? Yep. Like, is it just going to stay there and there's a disconnect between these computing environments, or is there going to be a bridge between those worlds at some point?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the bridge or the disconnect, I mean, that's all speculation for me. I think that I feel that, like, sorry, OpenAI, but you're going away. And
that's your contrarian take right there.
Yeah, maybe that's a good one. That's another better one.
But and when I say that, it's like it's so funny because you get software developers that are like inventing AI, and they're like, I'm inventing my own demise, right? And like the way I view OpenAI right now is I'm like, they're inventing their own demise. And the reason why I say that is because they've got these agent harnesses now that tie in with the new Codex application. I don't know if you guys have played with that or not, but it literally like ties into the entire computer API backend. So it can run in parallel, like behind the scenes, without, you can work in your own scenes. Like it's definitely an OpenClaw killer, like hands down, way faster.
They hired the OpenClaw guy.
Yeah, I know.
They brought him in. Now he's an employee of OpenAI, the OpenClaw developer.
Yeah, so. It's funny because he doesn't know what he's doing. And he'll tell you that. He's like, I have no idea. I just wondered. I thought it was cool. But they sat down with him and with some engineers and like, hey, how can we do this better? And they found it. And it's working. But Apple, man, if I don't give investment advice because I'm not legally allowed to, right? But like, I'm putting everything in Apple. I'm betting on black on this.
Well, tell me more about that, because Apple clearly has not caught up to date in this front. I love Apple. I love their products. Have been for a while. But when it comes to this battleground right now, like, Apple is not showing up at all. And it's like they sat on it for a little while, and then they had, Apple Intelligence and stuff. They're supposed to have these applications, but it hasn't. It hasn't happened yet. So why are you betting on Apple right now?
I'm betting on Apple because I've seen the SDKs and the back end and the source code for their operating systems, specifically like iOS, and being able to see that, they failed their launch with Apple Intelligence, 100%, right? But what's really going on is they're positioning themselves on a hardware level to be able to support local small LLMs like I've been talking about.
Okay.
And they've made it available within their own operating system. They have an LLM that's running, just like you mentioned. You mentioned having what was it called? I don't use it, so I.
OpenClaw.
No. What?
Olama.
Olama. Thank you.
Yeah, Olama.
You mentioned having Olama installed on your machine. If you use an Apple machine, do you use like Apple laptop?
No, that one is Windows.
Okay,
yeah.
but
I'm a Neanderthal when it comes to that, so I'm on Windows, not Linux.
So every Apple machine right now that's running like the most recent Apple hardware or operating systems, it already has Olama running in the background. You don't even know it, but it has its own LLM that's already there.
Are you saying that they're setting up an environment, marketplace, infrastructure, the way that they always do with Apple programs for Apple environment, and Apple apps and the App Store, and all that vetting that goes into it? You're saying they're doing something similar for all generative applications?
No, that's not really what I mean there. What I mean is that they are building the hardware that is going to be required, and not just the hardware, but they have the operating system too. They're designing both the hardware and the operating system.
I see. Okay.
And so they've tied them in so closely that it makes it seamless for developers to, like, I can pop up like Xcode, load up a library, and throw in my own model.
I guess that's what I mean, is they're setting up the conditions for developers outside to utilize their platform.
Yeah, and it's more than just the developers, right? Like, the integration is so deep within the system, it's like built around it almost at this point. Like, they are making the integration so fine-tuned. And all of the LLM models out there, like specifically the OpenAI, theirs is so good at programming in Swift, the programming language for Apple. And like that, all of the libraries they have access to, and it's like, it's making it to where anyone can use it. You don't have to be like a super great developer to like have your own application on your own iPhone.
Well, let's get back to vibe coding.
Okay.
You said it. There was a little. This is a good place for contrarian points of view, I think, because people have strong feelings about vibe coding.
They do.
And we, when I said get hands dirty, messing around, like I've done all kinds of stuff. I've put together like silly, like 1990s era text-based cowboy game, exploring a map and all that, all in text stuff, vibe coding all of it. Now, I mean, it's not like a finished product, but it's enough to have fun with it to better understand what's going on. I am pro vibe coding because I think it's healthy for the industry for more people to be involved. When it comes to getting to a point where you're finishing a product, that can't be only vibe coded, but vibe coding is like, it's like jamming, it's like improvisation that can lead to good things. So what's your...
I'm completely against you.
Totally against. Okay.
No.
Continue.
So here's the thing for me, at least for vibe coding, is that I think that it's great for people to jump in there and do their own projects, but they should not be allowed to sell it. I think that there's a lot that goes on to this because especially with the like it used to be like you have to know what you're doing in order to make a software product and sell it, right? Like you're not going to be able to get past like the first couple steps in the process if you don't. Now it's like the AIs jump in there and they do most of it for you, but just like with OpenClaw, and OpenClaw's initial release was like bugs galore. It was a security nightmare. And if you're going and offering a product and you haven't been able to go in there and do the due diligence that it's a safe and secure product, I don't feel like it should be a product. So I'm fine for hobbyists, doing vibe coding and making their own little application for themselves. But I think you need to be licensed to sell software,
I think
and that's where it should be.
Yeah,
But
that makes perfect sense. If you're going to put your name on it and accept the liability for your code, because more and more we're getting closer to some catastrophic event that's going to happen that's going to be tied to AI. Hasn't happened yet, but it's coming, absolutely. It took commercial airlines a long time to exist before one was used as a weapon, in a way that nobody expected, right? Something's going to happen with AI. It's going to be like we'd never seen before. It'll be a before and after moment. I don't know what it is. I don't hope that it's in my lifetime, but it's going to happen at some point. And so I think that acceptance of liability for the code that you have your hands on, absolutely. I totally agree. I think vibe coding is going to get better and better, and I may relax my point of view on that a bit as it continues to get better. But for the time being, absolutely. I think that it's... You're right on in saying that it needs to be.
I feel like we may also be in a transition period, to your point, of like, as the models and as the AI technology stack gets better, like some of the concerns around vibe coding start to, be absorbed by the security that's being built into the AI stack. But to Craig's point, like, I also don't see that happening without a concerted effort of companies like Holocron, for instance, to have serious awareness and baking in security concerns into the use of AI from a first principles way, and really having a thought and dedicating a lot of thought to how things work at the most vulnerable layers, which are now becoming the most fundamental layers, which is at the hardware layer.
Yeah.
It goes. This is one of the things that I think Craig is signaling here, is that Apple has been quiet about it, but they are opening up their platform in a way to AI in a way that their hardware probably has never been opened before. So it's a shift at that layer of importance, because that's a really fundamental layer. And so having an awareness of like what the AI stack looks like at that layer, I think is going to be important for what happens all the way above it, but that has to coexist with this other like release of creative energy that vibe coding represents, which I embrace. Just because I think of it as like a sketch pad,
Yeah.
It's the way that I sketch initially, and I sketch in natural language. Like Andrei Karpathy had that wonderful tweet or whatever that's now become canonical, which is like English, the hottest programming language is English now, and that was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, because that's a reality. Like I remember when I was first learning to code, you had to do this shift in your mind between writing pseudocode, which is essentially just an algorithm in English, into Python or into JavaScript or whatever. And you still had to do that. Now you just write the pseudocode, and it doesn't even have to look like an algorithm. It can just look like an idea dump.
So are people gonna still care about parentheses and semicolons the way they do around things like Python and clinging on to semicolons for line breaks and things? It seems like little syntax details like that just don't matter. People aren't going to care about it anymore. And for a long time, seems like that was in the conversation. People would cling to whatever language they were stands about.
I want to maybe have a little bit of a contrarian take here, which is that I actually think that as people start to embrace what I'm describing here, this like compilation of English into code, so the LLMs become your compiler now. You can just speak in English and the LLM will compile it into whatever code you want, right? So it abstracts away the concern that you would otherwise have with the syntax of Rust, of Python, of JavaScript, or whatever. my contrarian take is that now more than ever, I'm more interested in Rust type system. I'm more interested in learning about the fundamentals of JavaScript because I realize that every time I'm still one of those coders that when I have my IDE open, like I want to see the code that it's writing. I want to see, and I open up its thinking to see exactly what it's doing, and I read its code. That's very quickly becoming kind of obsolete, to do that. But I still feel good doing that because I still have like an artisanal mindset with code, so to speak, and so I like to go and see, okay, this is how the LLM is treating types in Rust, and this is how it's treating types in TypeScript, and so it allows me, if anything, a tool that is supposed to make me unconcerned and treat code as irrelevant is making me actually want to learn more about it and learn more about the beauty of why certain things are a certain way inside of a programming language. So it's making me even more nerdy about the specifics of programming, while also at the same time like vastly speeding up my ability to write things, and get things to be functional. So I don't know.
So I think that you guys have great takes on this, right? And you were just mentioning like pseudocode being translated over to a actual programming language, and that's amazing too. That's great. I think that like a lot of the vibe coders that are out there that are starting up some of this stuff, they're like, hey, I have an AI that can do this for me now. I have this great idea. They're not going to do that pseudocode aspect. They're going to be like, give me a product that does this, right? And so a lot of that's going to get dropped, right? But for software engineers or somebody with a little bit of development background and stuff, yeah, the pseudocode part, that's great. I mean, that is a huge stepping stone towards, doing the actual foundational work and making sure that the AI has, tight specs that are written, which is instrumental for any type of software engineering using AI right now, is using like spec-driven development with like test-driven development as well, right? So you have to dual end that, so that you get those proper failures, right, every time that it goes. And there's so many, like the list goes on and on. It took us probably like 2 months to dial it in to where our AI agents were coding in the correct way, right? And so it takes a lot of effort in order to do that. And I think that a lot of people haven't even tackled that process yet. Shout out to Robert Winslow over at Blaze. I forgot the next part of it. Maybe it's Blaze Works. He has a spin up or a startup that he started probably like 2 months ago that I've talked to him through and everything. He gave him some feedback on how we did things at Holocron. Hope the best for Bob. But his whole position is he's trying to help people through that process, that initial process of getting their AI agents to write the correct way, right? And going back to what you said with like the semicolons and stuff, I think that's super important. Maybe that's just me. Coding standards existed for so long, and there's a reason why AI agents are as good as they are today is because people followed coding standards. And without those coding standards, one, it makes it impossible to read fast. And so like as somebody that goes in and does a whole bunch of code reviews, right, is that, when you look at that code, if it's not formatted correctly, if it's, doing something funky and weird that you're not expecting, it's going to derail your entire day. You don't get that same thing with an AI agent. The AI agent is able to jump in and punctuation doesn't matter to it maybe, the line breaks, whatever. But, like we went back to, is there needs to be somebody that's accountable. We do AI agents for reviews as initial reviews to flag the grotesque things, right? But the final overview is always a human for us. There's always a human overview.
Yeah, I kind of, when it comes to any task that I get AI assistance, I figure about 80 to 85% of the task can be done and should be done first by AI. But there is no replacement for that last 15% that we got to be engaged about. And I feel like that's the point where people, if they're approaching their tools in order to break them and show where it breaks down, oftentimes the task that they give it, they want it to deliver a finished product, which I don't think it really can. That validation needs to be there, and that's where critical thinking becomes more important. We're not going to lose critical thinking in using, these tools. It's going to highlight how important it is to have that human look at it, to humanize the thing, humanize.
It's funny you say that, the humanized thing. I really do believe that at some point the AI is going to be way better than any person, right, going through. And
in general.
In general, absolutely. But what I meant for that is like the software engineering side, and like the last 15% needs to be a human. Addressing that part is that it's the innovation part that I feel like the AI is leaps and bounds away from, is innovation.
Yep.
And for humans, we're able to anticipate the next step, right? AI, they predict the next token. And that's really, it all comes down to math and fundamentals on that, and it's always predicting the next token. Whereas us, when we look at an entire function, we understand what that next function needs to be. And so that's where, when I say we always have a final person going through that review, is because we anticipate what's next. Whereas the AI has no idea, and it can't do that. And so, at least at Holocron, that's where I see the human in the loop being. But I think that AI is going to be way better of a developer than I could ever be, in the future. And maybe even for security and look at what was Anthropic's new model, Mythos.
Yeah.
And so Mythos being like cracking software that's been out for decades, right? Like 40 years or something in a Linux kernel. And I say 40, it's probably not that long, but you get what I'm saying. It's like, it's been around for a very long time, and they're able to crack into the Linux kernel that developers have reviewed for years. And it's very elaborate, the actual exploits that it finds. And so in the same way, I think that, maybe that developer is better than I am. Mythos, maybe it's better than me, but it's not going to be able to anticipate the future like I am, and it's not going to be able to innovate like I am, and it's not going to be able to do that for a very long time. And that's my take on the human in the loop.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Specifically about Holocron, what you guys do. What do you do?
Yeah.
Just give me the 4-sentence version of it. I kind of have an idea as to what you're doing, but if you were to distill it down, make it a soundbite. What do you guys do?
Well, we provide secure solutions of cloud deployments and infrastructure. So like Microsoft GCC high environments or just regular Entra. We provide those secure environments to clients that don't have the resources or the capabilities or the know-how to implement in secure ways. We automate that entire process. And we turn it over. It's theirs. It's not ours. It's not a SaaS provider. When we build an environment, it is their environment.
Okay, gotcha.
So they hold on to it.
So it's not an ongoing...
So we have a perpetual, or we have when we deploy the environment, that environment is theirs. That's theirs forever. But we have subscription fees for us to come in and maintain if they need. And it's a very reduced amount. And we have software that's in place to where they can operate the system or build on or increase or improve, stand up their own EC2 instances for AWS, for instance, with the help of an LLM. But there's always ongoing security updates, right? And so for quarterly DISA STIGs that get released, we're in there, we provide the STIGing, we update source code, we go in and we ensure that the existing infrastructure is up to date as needed. And so that portion we're providing, because they're not going to have a DevSecOps, or even if they do have a DevSecOps, or somebody like that, we work with them in order to do these things. So that's our overall soundbite, I guess. It's kind of long.
Yeah, no, that's good. I kind of had that tacked on question about the ongoing services and things, but so that's today's problem that you're solving. You have a solution for, you want to get it in places. You also just mentioned Mythos and what it can do to break something significant at a very low level. How do you keep up with those things that are that are emerging every day, every week. There's some new capability that I can do that puts things at threat. Like, what's the philosophy around how you approach staying innovative in security?
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
Yeah, the philosophy behind it. And so, I mean, the questioning attitude, I guess, is what it comes down to. It's always thinking like, all right, well, what's next? Or, if I could do this better, how would I do it? That innovation aspect. For instance, we foresee, especially with Mythos, right, is like attacks are going to be at the speed of machines. So it's no longer a human in the loop that goes in and performs some type of like attack on somebody. They're not going to be going in and writing shell code to deploy into a memory leak, right, and get a terminal and then, or do some type of persistent monitoring to be like, oh, I know that my next target is this other machine over here, right? That's all going to be done automatically by an agent that's deployed and has been collecting data for a long period of time, slowly releasing, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, I know everything I need to know.
That never gets tired.
Right, just do it, and it does it, right? Yeah. So that's attacking at the speed of machines. And I feel like the only way to protect against that is to be able to react at the speed of machines. So that's our next step in Holocron. Like, we've built out, at the current time, we have an automated deployment for AWS GovCloud as well as AWS, but it's CMMC compliant. We are designed it at NIST 853 for IL5 deployments, but the biggest customer base that we're searching right now is CMMC compliant people, especially because level 2 is now a requirement for November, and so we've got that implemented. But inside each one of those environments, the compute nodes, we also have agents, local agents that are installed, and that's part of our KyberDoc suite. And those agents communicate to each other. They also communicate back to a dashboard, and that dashboard allows you to like interact directly with the machine and ask the machine questions as if it was a person. And so you can not just ask them things, you can interact and tell it like, okay, we want you to take this security profile specifically, and it'll load that security profile in and it'll execute it and make sure that it's continuously monitoring, right, that it is met. If there's anything that's flagging or anything off, it notifies the dashboard immediately. If it has abnormal behavior on the system, notifies the dashboard immediately. And so people can see it and take proper response through the dashboard. It's a unified place for all the fleet that they have. Well, we also have it to where you pull in your incident response plan into the dashboard. Well, now that incident response plan all the other agents can see it. They know that it's present. They have a plan. The next step that we're tackling is having those agents communicate directly with each other in order to take actions and respond based off the incident response plan.
So if something happened, agents collaborate and do whatever they need to do. Human enters in the loop and tries to figure out what happened. How does the human figure out the order of events and extract kind of the key information that they need from supposedly thousands of small interactions that just happen between agents? How do we understand as humans what happens?
Yeah, so right now, the way that this would happen, right, is that without KyberDocs, without Rapid Factory, without the HoloNet, is that a human would identify, hey, this log flagged for some reason. Well, what's going on this machine? And they'd have to go and investigate. Sure, there was one log that was flagged, but what other behaviors are happening that isn't being flagged? And so and that's if they're lucky to see that flag. And so then they go in and they investigate, and then they'll determine, oh wait, this was a machine, this machine was compromised, right? And they'll have to go in and determine, okay, well, where has this compromise ended up? Where did it go to? And most of the time, if they're a well-oiled machine for cybersecurity, they will just leave the machine as is in the network, and they will monitor it to see what kind of happens. They will limit the information that's already there. They won't put more information on it. They'll honeypot it. And then, and so they will try to learn more about what's going on that machine and throughout that process. And it's a very long process, right? With our agents installed locally, they're sending streams back to the dashboard, encrypted by the agent. It can't be, read by anybody else besides the agent and the dashboard. End-to-end encryption, straight tunnel. So that process, the attacker, it's not going to know that, hey, I've been determined. It's not going to know anything. So it's still keeping that, secret monitoring. It can automate to the other machines saying, immediately honeypot me, instead of somebody coming in and figuring it out and then being like, oh yeah, we need to honeypot this machine. Instead, it's instantaneous. So that everyone else in the network knows, hey, I need to limit what you send me. I may be compromised. And then it flags it and then lets the operator on the dashboard know. And all the machines coordinate. So they make their own reports. And then on the dashboard, it has its own AI that goes through and reads these reports and creates summaries and whatnot for the human to digest. And that's already made, is that dashboard. That's already running right now on our network, is all these agents on different VMs, and they're all communicating back to the dashboard. It's that agent-to-agent process that's really difficult that we're trying to get locked down. And I'll tell you, we've made a lot of progress. Rob's been talking about a little bit of concept registry, how we handle memory, and it goes beyond, like, we started our focus on like how to make these agents better and how to make it, like I said, running on a small LLM on their own, right? So you don't even need to send everything back and communicate to an LLM at a different location. It can all run locally. But the way to improve that and have its own memory. And so we're like, hey, well, this goes beyond just beyond the aspect of agent to agent. This will help with human to LLM or human to agent as well. And so then we went through and developed something, the concept registry, where we have like proper memory management on the agent through a harness that goes through and has like a subconscious that's constantly iterating over chain of thought, withdrawing out the proper concepts, the proper actions that were taken. I don't know if you've ever interacted with an LLM before, to where it's like it give you the wrong answer and you're like, no, that wasn't it. You go back and forth.
Yeah, argues a bit.
Right. And then like eventually it's like, oh, well, this was what I did. You were wrong, or whatever, and you tell it, and it's like, oh, I'll improve myself, right? But that improvement, you don't see it, right? You don't see it. And the reason why, and maybe you'll see it if you have memory turned on or whatever in some of the newer harnesses. But what we've done is we've implemented a sub-agent that runs over continuously. We call it the subconscious, and withdraws those core concepts and writes the information to a long-term, short-term memory in different formats that has like vectoring, a vector DB that points over to like YAML files, and those YAML files have like all the details of your conversation. And then it summarizes that and writes the core concepts to a concept registry. And then it's able to share that concept registry, so that not just that one agent can recall this information, but others can as well. And it, I don't know if you're aware, but when the Chinese first determined like reasoning models, like there was R1, DeepSeek R1, DeepSeek, yeah. Right? What they ended up doing was just taking a bunch of chain of thought conversations of like what we just talked about, how it's like, oh, you're wrong, or why this, or ask questions. They took a bunch of those and they trained the model on that. And it taught the model to reason. And so now whenever you send in a token or a request, it thinks through that same process. What we've come to find out with our testing on our concept registry is that you have this concept registry and you inject it using these sub-agents. There's sub-agent that calls it on both ends, and so throughout our process is that it enhances that reasoning. And so you get reasoning that is formed directly towards your core principles for your organization, for your company, for yourself. So if you have your agent that is personalized to you, it's just like that. If you have a superstar performer at your organization and you want everyone to use an LLM like that superstar, you can point it to the concept registry and give that person a higher weight. And so it's going to learn more from that person than other people. So it's a pretty unique skill set that it has. It's awesome.
I am so impressed that we went in a direction that I didn't think that we were going to go to, because it's so deep. It's like literally the cutting edge of the work at Holocron, which is awesome. And you always do such a great job at bridging like the simple aspect of the product suite with the most advanced aspects of it, because I've been in the conversations with the engineers talking about just this subject, and it's wonderful hearing the engineers talk, because it really is pushing at ideas that are really at the forefront of science, of cryptography, of just like blockchain, of things that are really heavy things in technology. But anyways, I could go on and on and on. I was told to wrap it up, so any lingering thoughts that you guys want to share before we wrap up? I know that
I just want to thank for the space. Like, this is awesome. This place
absolutely,
is great.
and I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, absolutely, we will.
Looking forward to the next conversation we have.
Yeah,
awesome.
Well, thanks you.
Well, thank you, Craig.
Yep.
Thank you, Blake, and thank you all for joining us.
Thanks.